The first line of our terms of service say that you control and own the information and content that you put on Facebook. I believe it's important to tell people exactly how the information that they share on Facebook is going to be used. That's why every single time you go to share something on Facebook, whether it's a photo in Facebook or a message in Messenger or WhatsApp, every single time there's a control right there about who you're going to be sharing it with, whether it's your friends or public or a specific group, and you can change that and control that in line. This is actually a very important question, and I'm glad you brought this up because there's a very common misperception about Facebook that we sell data to advertisers. And we do not sell data to advertisers. What we allow is for advertisers to tell us who they want to reach, and then we do the placement. So if an advertiser comes to us and says, all right, I'm a ski shop and I want to sell skis to women, then we might have some sense because people shared skiing related content or said they were interested in that. They shared whether they're a woman, and then we can show the ads to the right people. The way that the system works is advertisers bid how much it's worth it to them to show an ad or when an action happens. So it's not that we would get a % of the sale, but let's just use an example. So let's say you're an app developer and your goal is you want to get more people to install your app. You could bid in the ad system and say, I will pay $3 anytime someone installs this app. And then we basically calculate on our side which ads are going to be relevant for people. And we have an incentive to show people ads that are going to be relevant because we only get paid when it delivers a business result. And that's how the system works. But without that data ever changing hands and going to the advertiser, that's a very fundamental part of how our model works and something that is often misunderstood. So I appreciate that you brought that up. We learned in 2015 that Cambridge Analytica had bought data from an app developer on Facebook that people had shared it with. We did take action. We took down the app, and we demanded that both the app developer and Cambridge Analytica delete and stop using any data that they had. They told us that they did this. In retrospect, it was clearly a mistake to believe them. We've updated our policies and how we're going to operate the company to make sure that we don't make that mistake again. We were slow in identifying the Russian information operations in 2016. We expected them to do a number of more traditional cyber attacks, which we did identify and notify the campaigns that they were trying to hack into them, but we were slow at identifying the type of new information operation. We provided support to the Trump campaign similar to what we provide to any advertiser or campaign who asks for it. Let me say a few things about this. First, I understand where that concern is coming from because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern that I have and that I try to root out at the company is making sure that we don't have any bias in the work that we do. And I think it is a fair concern that that people would at least wonder about. 2018 is an incredibly important year for elections, not just with the US midterms, but around the world. There are important elections in India, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Pakistan, and in Hungary that we want to make sure that we do everything we can to protect the integrity of those elections. Now, I have more confidence that we're going to get this right because since the 2016 election, there have been several important elections around the world where we've had a better record. There's the French presidential election, there's the German election, there was the US Senate Alabama special election last year. We were able to proactively remove tens of thousands of accounts that before they could contribute significant harm. And the nature of these attacks, though, is that there are people in Russia whose job it is to try to exploit our systems and other internet systems and other systems as well. So this is an arms race. For the first 10 or 12 years of the company, I viewed our responsibility as primarily building tools that if we could put those tools in people's hands, then that would empower people to do good things. What I think we've learned now across a number of issues, not just data privacy, but also fake news and foreign interference in elections, is that we need to take a more proactive role and a broader view of our responsibility. It's not enough to just build tools. We need to make sure that they're used for good. And that means that we need to now take a more active view in policing the ecosystem, and in watching and kind of looking out and making sure that all of the members in our community are using these tools in a way that's going to be good and healthy. I don't believe that there is certain content that clearly we do not allow, right? Hate speech, terrorist content, nudity, anything that makes people feel unsafe in the community. I think that there are a number of things that we would all agree are clearly bad. Foreign interference in our elections, terrorism, self-harm. I think that you would probably agree that we should remove terrorist propaganda from the service. So that, I agree, I think is clearly bad activity that we want to get down, and we're generally proud of how well we do at that. Now, what I can say, and I do want to get this in before the end here, is that I'm very committed to making sure that Facebook is a platform for all ideas. That is a very important founding principle of what we do. We're proud of the discourse and the different ideas that people can share on the service. And that is something that, as long as I'm running the company, I'm going to be committed to making sure is the case. We would not proactively do that. We cooperate with law enforcement in two cases. One is if we become aware of an imminent threat of harm, then we will proactively reach out to law enforcement, as we believe is our responsibility to do. The other is when law enforcement reaches out to us with a valid legal subpoena or request for data. In those cases, if their request is overly broad or we believe it's not a legal request, then we're going to push back aggressively. I'm not actually sure I understand this enough to speak to that specific point, and I can have my team follow up with you on the details of that. In general, bounty programs are an important part of the security arsenal for hardening a lot of systems. I think we should expect that we're going to invest a lot in hardening our systems ourselves, and that we're going to audit and investigate a lot of the folks in our ecosystem. But even with that, having the ability to enlist other third parties outside of the company to be able to help us out by giving them an incentive to point out when they see issues, I think is likely going to help us improve the security of the platform overall, which is why we did this. Let me be clear on this. I mean, so you're talking about this conspiracy theory that gets passed around, that we listen to what's going on your microphone and use that for ads. Right. We don't do that. To be clear, we do allow people to take videos on their devices and share those. And of course, videos also have audio. So we do, while you're taking a video, record that and use that to make the service better by making sure that your videos have audio. I don't believe we've ever collected the content of phone calls. We have an app called Messenger that allows people to message mostly their Facebook friends. And we do, on the Android operating system, allow people to use that app as their client for both Facebook messages and texts. So we do allow people to import their texts into that. But your point about surveillance, I think that there's a very important distinction to draw here, which is that when organizations do surveillance, people don't have control over that. But on Facebook, everything that you share there, you have control over. You can say, I don't want this information to be there. You have full access to understand every piece of information that Facebook might know about you, and you can get rid of all of it. And I don't know of any surveillance organization in the world that operates that way, which is why I think that comparison just isn't really apt here. In general, Facebook is not collecting data from other apps that you use. There may be some specific things about the device that you're using that Facebook needs to understand in order to offer the service, But if you're using Google or you're using some texting app, unless you specifically opt in that you want to share the texting app information, Facebook wouldn't see that. I'm not sure specifically. Overall, I do think that these issues around information access are challenging. You choose to put it there, you could take it down anytime, and you completely control the terms under which it's used. When you put it on Facebook, you are granting us a license to be able to show it to other people. I mean, that's necessary in order for the service to operate. Right. My position is not that there should be no regulation. I think the real question, as the internet becomes more important in people's lives, is what is the right regulation? Net neutrality has been a hotly debated topic, and one of the reasons why I have been out there saying that I think that that should be the case is because I look at my own story of when I was getting started building Facebook at Harvard. I only had one option for an ISP to use, and if I had to pay extra in order to make it so that my app could potentially be seen or used by other people, then we probably wouldn't be here today. I just think we have a broader responsibility than what the law requires. I'm not the type of person who thinks that all regulation is bad. So I think the internet is becoming increasingly important in people's lives, and I think we need to have a full conversation about what is the right regulation, not whether it should be or shouldn't be. That's not how we talk about this or how we set up our product teams. That makes sense to me, and I think we should have our team follow up with yours to discuss the details around that more. There are three main things that we're doing in Myanmar specifically, and that will apply to other situations like that. The first is hiring enough people to do local language support, because the definition of hate speech or things that can be racially coded to incite violence are very language specific, and we can't do that with just English speakers for people around the world, so we need to grow that. The second is, in these countries there tend to be active civil society who can help us identify the figures who are spreading hate. And we can work with them in order to make sure that those figures don't have a place on our platform. The third is that there are specific product changes that we can make in order to, that might be necessary in some countries but not others, including things around news literacy, right? And encouraging people in different countries about ramping up or down things that we might do around fact-checking of content. From the beginning of the company in 2004, I started in my dorm room. It was me and my roommate. We didn't have AI technology that could look at the content that people were sharing, so we basically had to enforce our content policies reactively. People could share what they wanted, and then if someone in the community found it to be offensive or against our policies, they'd flag it for us and we'd look at it reactively. Now, increasingly, we are developing AI tools that can identify certain classes of bad activity proactively and flag it for our team at Facebook. By the end of this year, by the way, we're going to have more than 20,000 people working on security and content review working across all these things. So when content gets flagged to us, we have those people look at it, and if it violates our policies, then we take it down. Some problems lend themselves more easily to AI solutions than others. So hate speech is one of the hardest, because determining if something is hate speech is very linguistically nuanced, right? You need to understand what is a slur and whether something is hateful, not just in English, but the majority of people on Facebook use it in languages that are different across the world. Contrast that, for example, with an area like finding terrorist propaganda, which we've actually been very successful at deploying AI tools on already. Today, as we sit here, 99% of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda content that we take down on Facebook, our AI systems flag before any human sees it. So that's a success in terms of rolling out AI tools that can proactively police and enforce safety across the community. Hate speech, I am optimistic that over a 5 to 10 year period, we will have AI tools that can get into some of the nuances, the linguistic nuances of different types of content to be more accurate in flagging things for our systems. I think the core question you're asking about AI transparency is a really important one that people are just starting to very seriously study, and that's ramping up a lot. And I think this is going to be a very central question for how we think about AI systems over the next decade and beyond. Right now, a lot of our AI systems make decisions in ways that people don't really understand.
Right.
And I don't think that in 10 or 20 years in the future that we all want to build, we want to end up with systems that people don't understand how they're making decisions. So doing the research now to make sure that these systems can have those principles as we're developing them, I think is certainly an extremely important thing. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. Yes, that's our approach. If there is an imminent threat of harm, we're going to take a conservative position on that and make sure that we flag that and understand that more broadly. But overall, I want to make sure that we provide people with the most voice possible. I want the widest possible expression, and I don't want anyone at our company to make any decisions based on the political ideology of the content.